I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. We're reconvening with all the members present. Can you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, can I have a motion for approval of the minutes? Can we do all of them? The executive of May 8th, regular minutes of May 8th, executive minutes of May 22nd, regular minutes of May 22nd, executive minutes of June 12th, and regular minutes of June 12th. And I have a motion.
All of them.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Mayor Conley is on a well-deserved weekend, and sounds like he's having a good time already because I got a text and a nice photo of the beach. But anyway, I want to make a couple of remarks. On June 14th, down at the Lucy D. Anthony School, we had a rededication that was really very, very nice. After the war, there were barrack houses that were put on that property for people who were returning from the war. And they lived there for about 5 years. So a flagpole was put in their honor. So the electric department was involved, downtown, the DPW was involved. We had landscapers that helped. And it was really great because right after the dedication of this beautiful flagpole, we had a very nice little dinner on my front lawn. And the fire department was there, and they came with hot dogs and soda and whatever. So it was a really great evening. We had a lot of people show up that were actually born and raised there. Some people that were quite elderly that told us some really great stories. So I want to thank the Patriotic Celebration Committee. I want to thank the administration as well for allowing us to do something as nice as that. So. And also, now, I'm pleased to announce a $500,000 grant from the state of New Jersey Green Acres program to reduce the debt incurred buying the land for the Madison Recreation Complex. Special thanks to our state legislative delegation, Senator Richard Cody, Assemblywoman Mila Jacey, and in particular, Assemblyman John McKeon. John has led the fight to secure these grant funds, and this is not the first time he's helped us. He helped us a few years back with the same type of money. Later in the year, we'll invite our state legislative delegation to a council meeting and formally recognize their efforts on our behalf. Also, our state officials, those same state officials also met with the executive director of New Jersey Transit on Friday to request round-trip direct bus service from Madison to New York City, starting July 10th and running until the completion of the repair work in September at Penn Station. That decision is currently pending. So if you know any of these people down in Trenton, give them a shout-out and tell them that you're expecting this to happen. I'm going to do my reports from downtown, from DPW. If you ride around Madison, there's a lot going on. There's paving going on. There's the sewer department is getting all the manholes ready for the paving. They're trimming trees and doing removals of trees. The water department is working on water taps and leaks, and potholes and patchwork are being done. Mechanical services down there are always very busy. They are now assisting the fire department on all of their minor repairs as well. One of the things that they did regarding the dedication at the Lucy D. Fields is we had a beautiful plaque made, and they affixed it to a rock, which is not an easy thing to do from what I understand. And that was done by those guys in the mechanical service department. The Parks Department, they installed all the sod for that at Lucy Day. They did a great job. It looks absolutely beautiful. If you get a minute, you should ride down and take a look at it. They're continuing to mow the grass and maintain all the parks because now we have, the kids playing ball for the rest of the summer. And they have been helping the recreation department with bleachers at the MRC and also assisting the engineering department with those. From our engineering department, you may have noticed that there was a pretty bad repair that needed to be made to a sewer main on Central Avenue and Cook Avenue this last week. They were preparing all the manholes for the county paving work that's going to take place next year. And there was a collapse, and they did a great job. As you can see, they've done a great job in the front building, with the sidewalks. And the electric department has been putting in all of the electricity for the historic lampposts that will be out there. So it's been a very busy summer for all of us. Okay. Public safety, Mr. Landrigan.
Thank you. Okay, from the Madison Police Department. On June 2nd, Madison police officers assisted the Central Avenue School with their bike rodeo, which taught bicycle safety to its students. Officers were on hand to assist with instruction as well as bicycle inspections and bicycle registration in the event of bicycle theft. The event concluded with a police-escorted bike tour through the center of town. On July 12th, Auxiliary Police Officer Vincent Ciccarelli retired from the unit after 46 years. The Auxiliary Police Officer Vincent Ciccarelli retired from the unit after 46 years of dedicated service to the department and the citizens of Madison. Vincent was an asset to the auxiliary unit and will be missed by all. On June 14th, Corporal Bart Glob was awarded the Mothers Against Drunk Driving Award at Rutgers University for the year 2016. This award has been presented to Officer Glob 3 years in a row for his dedication to reduce impaired driving in the Borough of Madison. And finally, on June 20th, the Madison Police Department took possession of 12 Colt rifles, which will be replacing older rifles. The purchase of these rifles were paid for using forfeiture funding with no impact on the police budget. From the Madison Fire Department, the Fire Department was recently awarded an $800 grant from the Madison Rotary Club. The grant is specifically for the Fire Department to purchase 4 EpiPens, 2 adult and 2 child pens, which will be purchased. EpiPens are used for someone who is having an allergic reaction. And finally, the Fire Department will be marching in the Florham Park 4th of July parade this year. The parade starts at 9:30 a.m. in Florham Park. Thank you.
Finance and Borough Clerk, Ms. Bailey.
Oh, thank you. From the Finance Department, on June 14th, various staff met as part of the Quarterly Safety Committee. Purchasing and Personnel Director Linda Sawyer chaired the meeting, and various important topics were discussed, including cybersecurity, workplace safety, and training offered by the Joint Insurance Fund. And the audit has been completed, and we have received our copies for review. From the Tax Collector's Office, we are continuing to wait on the county to certify the tax rate, which we hope will happen on or before July 6th. If so, the tax bills will be mailed out by the end of next week with payment of third quarter taxes due on August 1st. Please note the short time turnaround. A notice will be placed on Rosenet as soon as the bills have been mailed. Thank you very much.
Utilities, Mr. Wolkowitz.
Thank you, Mayor. Starting with the Electric Utility Department, they replaced 2 primary voltage bushings at the Kings Road substation. They installed new poles on Rosedale and Greenwood Avenue. They installed new poles and repaired overhead cables that were caused by truck damage on Cook Avenue. You may recall that happened, about 6 weeks ago. They addressed multiple outages from a recent lightning storm. And they wanted to note that Kevin French, who's part of the staff, has completed the 4-year linesman course from Northwest Lineman College. As for the water department, they inspected and tested our interconnections with the American Water Company. They replaced curb boxes on Albright Circle and North Street. They had 116 requests for locating and marking underground utilities. And as was mentioned, the department assisted the sewer department with the work that was done on Central Avenue. I think one other thing to point out about that is had we had that work done outside and hired in experts to do that work, it probably would have cost us several $1,000s. So it was great that our own guys did it, and they saved us a lot of money. So thank you on 2 notes. Thank you.
Health, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Madison Health Department wants to report that it's working towards implementing a quality improvement plan to correct the issues identified in the State Health Department's audit. Second, they're beginning to conduct youth camp inspections. And finally, as a reminder, residents are asked to eliminate any stagnant water, including any unused pools or pool covers, to reduce mosquitoes, rodents, and other vermin. Thank you.
Community Affairs, Ms. Byrne.
Thank you. The farmers market continues to attract people downtown for their fresh produce and farm-to-table products. And the Madison Concert Series kicks off this Friday evening in front of the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts, starting from 6 until 8. So come on down, bring a chair, and enjoy some good music.
Okay.
That's it.
I'll ask the clerk if there's any communications or petitions.
None received, Mayor.
Thank you. So this is our first invitation for discussion. We're going to open the meeting to the public for their first opportunity to ask questions and make comments on any of the discussion items on the agenda or resolutions. There'll be another invitation for discussion later in the meeting on any other subject. We ask that upon recognition by the chair, the person shall proceed to the lectern and give his or her name and address in an audible tone of voice and print the same on the sheet provided for the record. Anybody? No? Okay. All right. So we'll move to our first agenda discussion. Mr. Wolkowitz, you're going to help us.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
I guess I should podium? Probably. All right. We haven't done one of these in a while because of sort of a transition in leadership. So it's a bit overdue. And the one we're doing tonight is not perfectly accurate. And the reason for that is because what we've done is we've looked at collections of funds, the inflows, and the expenditures we've made, the outflows, and we've added into them some that we expect with just about 100% confidence, but we have excluded others because we're not sure what the effective amount will be once the monies come in. So, and I'll make that clearer as we go through it. I'm sure what I just said went. But anyway, we'll get there. So initially, if you look at the top line, we have the tax levy, and that's estimated for the year because obviously we haven't collected it yet for the entire year, but plus or minus a couple of percent, that's what we collect. So that we have high confidence in that number. The MET's 2016 grant reimbursement is a result of the unfortunate fact that the METC was not given the grant that it applied for, and therefore the monies we gave them, which were to be used as basically showing that, in fact, they were supporting this project. I believe it was 20 or 25% of the full ask. With not getting it, they returned the funds to the open space trust fund account, which is standard operating procedure. Rental fees and user fees, we're just getting in. We're just getting into the season. So annually, that's really an underrepresentation of what we would expect to have. But we're at a loss to tell you what we will have precisely. So rather than guess, we just left it blank and put in the amount we've collected year to date. The fact of the matter is the summer is the great time for us to rent out fields and make additional funds. The sports program bleacher contribution, as you may recall, the Open Space Trust Fund operates now with the requirement that anyone who wants funds from that account has to put up 20% of the overall cost of the project. So in this case, it was early in the process. It had changed basically as this process was ongoing. And so we said for this particular one, it would be 10%. But going forward, it would be 20%. Since the project cost, and you see down here, $274,000, we received $27,500, representing a 10% contribution from the REC. As I said, in the future, that would be 20%. So we would have expected now if it would happen to be 54,000. Other revenues are basically interest on what we have in the bank, and as you all know, that isn't very much these days. On the outflow side, we start out with we have two debt payments, and we know what they are. So one we've already paid. This is the February interest only of $53,000. The second payment would normally be much larger, but the $500,000 that the mayor mentioned can only be used in our case, and it has to do with the way the debt is structured, and I can get into detail if you care, but basically what we can do is pay down principal over time. So in effect, what we have is a sufficient amount of money to pay down principal for 3 years. And this reflects the first year payment. So rather than be something on the order of $280,000, it's $138,000. Very nice. The maintenance fee is for area. If you go to the MRC, it's the area by the fence that blocks the road. So that area is taken care of by people on the other side of the road. It's by prior agreement that we share the cost. That's our contribution. The Land Conservancy in New Jersey was paid $704,000. We have a Land Conservancy person who's a consultant to us, and this represents the amount billed year to date. Excuse me. The library fund, this is going back to the James building. They're indeed trying for additional funds, and they have some projects that need to be done. They've asked us for $140,000, which was granted by approval of the council, and that's represented here. The pollinator garden is obviously not very expensive. It's $441,000. Initially, the ask was for $1,500, but the ask was for us and several other grantors, and obviously they got the money they needed, so that's all they needed from us. It's, by the way, it's right by the community gardens. And the intent is to attract bees to the area so they pollinate the garden a bit better than we've had in the past. It's an interesting project, and obviously it's not costing us much money. The bleachers. Which button gets me back? There we go.
The back button.
Thank you. Excuse me. The bleachers I mentioned earlier. Project close to done, I understand. The foundation work could all be done, and the bleachers were delivered today, I believe. So it should be very soon. You can go over and sit on a nice new bleachers. And that's basically the story. There is one other piece reflected here, the $300,000 gift, the first note. That gift came from the development organization that sold us the property that's now the MRC. Very nice of them. It's restricted funds that can only be used for remediation, land acquisition, and aquifer recharge. So it's currently sitting as sequestered and allocated funds for those purposes. We not identified such projects as yet, but when they come along, we have that pot to look to. So based on these assumptions and obviously mixing a little bit of apples and oranges in terms of timing, the available balance as of the 31st, projected and otherwise, is approximately $274,000. What we have in the wings that may require the use of those funds, or a good portion of them, would be the work to be done on this building. We have applied for a grant, and our percentage of that grant would cost it about $140,000. So that's certainly a major project. And I'm trying to think of project number 2. Escape me.
Is there a building going up by the skating rink?
No.
No?
I know what it is. We've applied for a grant. No, they haven't
come in yet.
I haven't heard about it yet.
Okay.
What we're talking about here is Summerhill Park. We have applied for a grant for trails to be put in there. There's also a proposed project to build an arboretum. There are other things we will need to make that area as effective as we'd like, including parking space and probably a trailhead kiosk, just so people know where they are and identify where they could go. These are not huge items, but they probably will come to $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, depending on how it's all done. So if we get those grants and we move ahead on the project, we'd like to have the money to really finish it in the right way, and that money, no doubt, will come from this trust fund. Any questions? Yes.
Am I recognized?
Hey, Pat.
Sorry. So I had already made these recommendations to Jim, but I'll keep doing them. I would prefer if we could actually show what we anticipate the balance at the end of the year. So we would include any additional revenues that we anticipate, like the field rentals and the user fees. We have a pretty good experience now on what we average for the year. Jim's usually conservative about it. So I'd like to see that plugged in. I'd also like to see us plug in anything that the Open Space Committee is either approved or expects to recommend before the end of the year, just so we get a rough idea of what we think the balance is going to be at the end of the year. It would have also been helpful, I think, to put the actual $145,000 in here under inflows and then shown the full debt payment so you could understand how that was, what that relationship was, and note that we're going to be able to make that payment for the next 3 or 2 more years after this. Because the way I looked at this at the end was, I don't know what the you said the trails could be 30 to 50,000?
It's a guess.
Okay. It looks like we're going to probably end the year somewhere between what we anticipate now and maybe $300,000, because I think the revenue that's coming in might be slightly more than what's going to go out, which is significantly more than we started the year. So I'd like to start to understand what the anticipated need for this building is going to be for next year or the following year, because next year we're not going to have, according to what the Museum of Early Trades told us, a request from them. I think they said this was going to be the last one they were going to make. And then we know we're not going to be doing the bleachers again next year. So, $400,000 plus that we spent this year is not going to be going out the door.
I think it's an overestimate. Let me just ask Jim quickly. The high side of the rental fees for the fields, 60, 70,000?
Correct, yes.
70,000. So if you add that,
Does that include the
add
user
that
fees?
in,
Most of the user fees are already in?
Some user fees are in, and I'm sorry,
For the
talking
year?
to the microphone, I apologize. We should anticipate another $60,000 or $70,000 total in field rental and user fees. I think that's a fair but
Above
conservative estimate.
what's here for the year.
Above what's there for the year.
You're saying over 100,000 for the year.
No, 60 or 70 plus 15,
80,
so
85.
about 80 to 90.
Oh, you said,
Pretty high.
That
no,
sounds
no, we've been averaging about 80.
6 feet,
No, we've been averaging 80.
75.
Okay. Anyway.
well, let's call it 75, just for argument's sake. So it would be 350,000.
Mm-hmm.
Assuming we get the grant for this building, we're on the hook for 150.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes us down to at least my counting it to 200,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sits there based on Summerhill Park and anything else that comes in between now and year end.
Mm-hmm.
So the result is, even if it stopped cold at that moment, it would be similar to the amount we began the year with.
Okay. But then starting next year, we're looking at adding another between the open space tax, the user fees, and the rental fees, another $100,000 without any significant projects on the horizon. So I think
I'm not arguing in I'm not trying to encourage people to come up with ways to spend money.
No, I understand that.
And I think you're asking the right question, and we should ask that every year, which is there too much money being allocated to this fund?
Yep.
I must say, initially, I thought perhaps, but after going through the numbers and the projects we know of for sure, and the money we know we left off and taking the high end of the range, the answer is we end up more or less where we began the year. So it doesn't sound like we're over the top.
I would say this year, no, but I'm saying as we start to look at next year's
I understand.
budget, that's
But I
right.
can't predict what will come in next year on the other side. Right? I mean, we may have an opportunity to acquire some land that we think is worth acquiring. We do have that $300,000 to put against it, right? So it gives us a nice starting place.
I was going to say the one thing about the land issue is going to be with our COA issue. It may be a challenge to acquire land other than for affordable housing. So
We stand ready to review any project proposal that comes to.
thank you.
There you go.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Have we begun a fund for restriping of the fields?
Have we? No, not that I'm aware of.
Which fields?
The MRC fields.
Research.
Resurfacing.
Surfacing.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean the
Projected
turf-
$1 million
turf fields
expense.
more?
I have no idea, but I have not heard of any such project, no. Or says,
My theory on that.
the acquisition of such funds.
You want me to
Yes.
explain my theory?
In regards to reskinning those fields, I've said for a long time, we should be putting money aside because the original argument was we would bond for it and then pay with user fees. I'll say it again. Once you bond for something, you pay with fees, interest, you pay more than what you need to pay with interest. So I think it would be prudent to start putting the money aside and start preparing for that $1 million nut that we're going to have to cover. Because those fields are, what, about 8, 9 years old? I think the life of them is maybe 10 to 12 on
Well,
the
the
outside.
guarantee is, I believe, 10.
Yeah, so we're getting near the point where we may have to start replacing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, a drone has looked at it, and it's showing wear and tear.
No, it's a good point. I actually, just for the heck of it, I took the outflows, and you have to make some broad assumptions, but I wanted to get an idea of how we're allocating these funds percentage-wise. And if I take the MRC project and look at that only as the cost of the fields, right? When we do the debt, as you may know, I hope you know, pays for the fields and the land. So it was an acquisition and a build. If I forget about the land, which is a big forget, because obviously the fields sit on the land, but if I forget about the land, just look at the fields, add in the rec projects we have, rec is far and away the biggest user, 56, 57%. If you start to add some of the land expenditure to it, it goes up dramatically. All right, and the remainder is open space at 21. Open space at 21%, historic preservation at 23. So if looking at it that way, rec is twice anyone else, and then some. But the fields are the fields. We paid for them, and I don't think anyone in town thinks it would be a good idea to leave them alone when they deteriorate to unusable.
I think it's fair, though, to point out two things. One, when it came to the fields, 2/3 of the costs were paid for by the Board of Ed and other money that came in. And the money that we are paying off in debt was primarily because
Which two-thirds was that?
1/3.
between the $500,000 we got from the state, between the $500,000 we got from the state, the money the Board of Ed gave, that was another third. And on top of it, don't forget, every year we collect another $80,000 from user fees and field use. That was originally part of the private contributions to paying off the field.
Well, outside of redoing history and arguing the case, I don't know what's
But
the
again,
point.
well, the point is that the fields are not really consuming that much. And the money that we did borrow was because the money that the council had originally set aside got used somewhere else, so the council instead decided to borrow the money. Because originally, everyone was supposed to contribute money.
We're reading from a different book.
I'll
getting-
I'll send you the note.
Yeah, it's far afield.
Okay, anyway.
Yeah, it's really far afield.
Yeah.
But I don't know of a pot of gold sitting there waiting to pay for reskinning of the fields.
No, well, my point's always been we should use the user fees and the field rentals to cover the debt service. And we might have to up the user fees slightly, but
It'll be hard to do.
no. Depends how long you take to pay it off.
Really?
Yeah.
All right, you should look at the debt service cost over the year and see if you think that'll be covered by fees. Be a stretch. Yes.
Hey, to Pat's point and the point I made before, your presentation was very good, and it showed all the projects that are coming up. My big concern as a taxpayer in this town is the large expenditures that we're going to have to cover, and minimizing that expenditure. And you have $1 million coming up to resurface the fields and future debt payment. And you got to think of a way you're going to cover that. That's the bottom line. I'm not going to go rehash how the fields were paid for and all that. That's past history. Going forward, what are we going to have to do?
Yeah. Okay, well taken, point well taken.
I think this has been a good dialogue. This is great. Yeah,
My pleasure.
I personally appreciate the fact that, that consistently this committee comes in and gives a report. And I think that's very important for all of us to understand that, we're updated on a continual basis. So thank you, Ben.
Well, the committee intends to get back on schedule, so write us in for the end of September. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. We have ordinances for hearing.
Off switch somewhere.
The ordinances scheduled for hearing were introduced by title and passed on first reading at the regular meeting of the council held on Monday, June the 12th, 2017. They were posted and filed according to law, and copies were made available to the general public requesting same.
I call up ordinance for second reading and ask the clerk to read said ordinance by title.
Ordinance 28, 2017, ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 94, Attachment 2, Appendix B, entitled Payment of Water and Electric Bills.
I open the hearing. I close the hearing.
I move ordinance 28-2017.
Second the motion?
I declare ordinance 28-20. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You guys really
Yes.
want to vote?
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Now? Okay. I declare ordinance 28-2017 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law.
Ordinance 29, 2017, ordinance amending Chapter 94, Attachment 3, Appendix C, entitled Electric Utility Department Rules and Regulations.
I open the hearing. Hearing no comment, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 29-2017.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 29-2017 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law.
Ordinance 30, 2017, ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 190 entitled Water.
I open the hearing. Hearing no response, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 30-2017.
Second the motion?
Roll call vote.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 30-2017 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. This is our invitation for our second discussion. This gives the public the opportunity to ask questions and comments on any subject. So it's the same kind of rules and regulations here. You come up to the lectern, you put your name and address there. We are asking that you respect the time limit of 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Tom Bostel, 194 Shunpike Road. I wanted to come up and piggyback off an issue that came up at the last council meeting that I wasn't able to be at. I know that Dr. and Mrs. Romano came and talked about an issue of running bamboo that was encroaching upon their property. from a neighbor. I know Dr. and Mrs. Romano. I spoke to them briefly about the issue and talked about some of the situations that we had on our property. We bought our house in 2014. Our neighbor right behind us on Corson Way moved in about a year earlier. And pre-existing both of our ownerships of the home, running bamboo was planted on the Corson property directly behind our home. And since that time, over the 3 years that we've lived in the home, it's been just an enormous amount of man-hours working on it, trying to keep it at bay. If you know the story in Greek mythology about the stone of Sisyphus, it's kind of like that. You'll never defeat it. You can only keep it at bay. And I know that Dr. and Mrs. Romano mentioned that they feel strongly that running bamboo should be banned in the borough, and I couldn't agree more. It's funny, I did some research on it. In 2014, the State Assembly, in bipartisan fashion, passed a law, or passed a bill to ban it statewide on private property. For whatever reason, it died in committee in the state Senate that same year. It just goes to show how much general agreement there is on this issue. Now, I know it's an issue that only affects a very limited number of parcels in the borough, so it really is not that sexy to most people who live here in Madison. But if you live in one of those parcels that is affected by it, it's a very big deal. And I certainly sympathize with the sentiments that Dr. and Mrs. Romano made at the last meeting. And I'll just close in saying that I'm someone who generally believes in property rights. I believe strongly in it. That you should be able to do with your property what you please. But I think there's a line on that, and the first line I can think of is when your use of the property actually physically encroaches upon adjacent properties around you. I don't think anybody has the right to do that, regardless of whatever people's intentions were when they planted this plant. I assure you it looks pretty, but that's the only thing pretty about it. And I know I wasn't here, and all I know is what I read in the Madison Eagle that Mayor Conley, I think he said that he was referring it back to the Environmental Commission. I don't know. I'm
The Health Department.
Health Department.
Yes.
Yeah, I was on a board back when I lived in Chatham, so I know that sometimes lines get crossed on communication between the borough governing body and these boards and commissions. So essentially, I'm just here tonight to kind of reiterate what the Romano said at the last meeting, and hope that this governing body will be diligent in keeping on the appropriate parties to put through an ordinance that will ban this practice. It won't affect me; it's already there. But I think it would have a lot of benefit for residents in the future to dissuade them from planting this running bamboo wild on their property. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mayor Conley did refer it to the Department of Health. It is a property maintenance problem, we feel. And Mr. Rowe is liaison to Department of Health, and we had a very short conversation in executive. And you're going to be meeting, right?
With
To
Ray and
discuss
the
with Ray
Department of Health executive.
We've taken it seriously. Mayor Conley has done what he said he would do. So it's in the works.
Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Jesse Esposito, Community Place. Again, I'm here before you about the parking situation I have on Community Place. I spoke with the mayor this week. Last week he had given me a call. I received an email from Corporal Delaval advising me that Community Place, according to the administration and to engineering department, is owned by housing. According to Madison Maps, all the maps I printed up, and I can show you, I did print it up for you so you can see. Now, if you look through there, there's also...
Jesse, go and talk into the... yeah, okay.
But I just want to show you these maps that I printed up, which is from the Borough of Madison. indicating the parking situation or the parking of streets during business zones, business hours, and 1 hour parking, 2 hour parking, 4 hour parking. I printed it up so you could see exactly what the borough owns, the street from Park Avenue to the dead-end signs. It's actually on this map, the parking map in Madison. They owned Community Place. The first portion of Community Place is a one-way, and it's from Park Avenue to Cook. It's a one-way, and one side of the street is no parking at all, and the other is 4 hour parking only. From Cook to the dead-end signs, where the map shows that Madison, the borough of Madison owns that street, we have a situation where people are parking all over the street, both sides. That is a hazard for emergency vehicles to get in. When I spoke to the mayor, he asked me to print this up and bring it to you, but bring it to him during the week, but I was unable to, seeing that I had to work. I have the zoning board resolutions attached. Do not bind the owner of any specific traffic safety measures except for 5 feet within the sidewalk. I have researched governing body, acts of the parcel. Housing, they say housing owns the property. I'm telling you, after reading your maps in Madison in the borough zoning, I learned that Community Place is Madison Borough's. I really want something done about the parking. No parking on the one side, continue it from the Park Avenue to Cook Avenue. Continue the one parking, no parking on the one side, and limit 4 hours to the other side. Also, you have people who park there overnight. You know, they call in their vehicle to park overnight, but after 10 o'clock in the morning, those vehicles should be moved. People in housing, the business owners, we have the Verizon store, you got the sneaker starting line store. The owners are parking over there all day. Nothing's being done at all. Emergency vehicles cannot get back there. The town won't plow it, but you have the street is a mess, and this parking situation is a hazard. I'm really trying to get something done to make it a better area that all these people don't abuse by parking there. Okay. Thank you for...
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
And you did have a conversation with the mayor, so you know he's...
I did. He called me up, and he asked me to just print up the paperwork. I was unable to print it sooner, but I wanted to show him where it is listed, right on the county map, the town map, borough map, Community Place. It's highlighted and everything for the hour parking. Now, I know you went 4 hours through the whole town, but, you know, I'd like to see something enforced over there because it's a dumping ground from housing and businesses and commuters. And I just want something done.
The administration will do a little more research on it, and I guess we can, Maureen, you could probably talk to, Joe Longo.
I mean, I could show you pictures that I have that I was unable to print up of all the parkers and how they blocked the whole street, both sides, up and down. And the people who complained was Adrian Taylor, whose father lived there and had passed, and he inherited the house. But he's got that for sale now. Mm-hmm. The other complainer was the guy Dave from Verizon, saying he's been parking there all along. Why can't he continue? The housing, there's only 4 people from the housing department. They park there 24/7. Nothing is ever done. Nothing. So I would please notify me or help me with this and help me rectify the situation. I'm asking you, please.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Yep. Is there anybody else?
Good evening, Kathy Daly, West End Avenue. As you know, the mayor and the borough attorney met a few weeks ago with myself and 11 others regarding Resolution 57. And I know that the mayor and the attorney, they did answer many of the questions we had raised. I think all of you received a copy of the questions in advance of our meeting with them. They did discuss those questions with us, and we did have very frank and honest discussion about all of those topics. The takeaway, what I understand the mayor and the attorney feel their takeaway from the meeting was to update the frequently asked questions for the resolution. I have some disagreement that that was their whole takeaway. We were also under the impression that they were going to be discussing all of our concerns with you as well. But regardless, the frequently asked questions, I haven't seen it updated on the website, if it has been, so we don't even have a copy of it to review yet.
I think it was updated on the website, right? A couple of weeks ago. Yeah, right after the meeting. And you haven't seen it?
I haven't been able to find it, no. So perhaps I can follow up with somebody sometime after this meeting. Or you probably all have my email address. You can just email me the link. Okay. Great.
Liz is just saying, come to the clerk's office and she'll...
Or email me and I'll...
Okay, thank you. Thank you. But I guess my concern is that I don't want everybody to think that we don't have any remaining concerns about the resolution. I think the fact that the frequently asked questions needs to be updated again, the fact that it even needs to have a frequently asked questions combined with the resolution, that's indicative of a resolution that needs to be looked at again. If it's that unclear, and if the attorney and the mayor and you are convinced that we have misinterpreted the intention, then I think it really does need to be clarified, and you need to seriously consider redrafting the resolution. Nobody is saying that Madison shouldn't have a welcoming community resolution. It's just what should be included in there, and is it truly reflecting what this body and the mayor would like it to reflect. So I ask you to seriously consider that, and that a different draft of a different proposed welcoming resolution was presented to the mayor and the attorney during that meeting, and we really do want them to seriously consider bringing it to all of you as well. It contains language that is really generally more acceptable, in the opinion of myself and the 11 others, more generally acceptable to more of Madison's residents than what you currently have. So, thank you.
I'll make sure that the mayor hears your comments. It's just going to go about a week or so. So when he gets back, we'll pass those comments on. Anybody else? Okay. So introduction of ordinances. We have no introductions of ordinances. And consent agenda resolutions.
The consent agenda resolutions will be enacted with a single motion. Any resolution requiring expenditure supported by a certification of availability of funds. Any resolution requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda. All resolutions will be reflected in full in the minutes.
Hey, I move resolutions R-185, 2017 through R-195, 2017. 196, 2017.
Second.
Any discussion? And do you have any discussion about any of them? Do you want any removed? Or?
No.
No.
Okay. Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale?
Yes.
Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Okay. We don't have any unfinished business. The approval of the vouchers.
The current fund is $3,882,222.81. The general capital fund, $454,537.09. Electric operating fund, $717,485.25. Water operating fund, $25,239.06. Water capital fund, $11,800. The trust, $21,507.70. The total is $5,110,791.91.
I'll move the approval of the vouchers.
Second.
Any discussion with any of those?
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mrs. Vitale? Yes. Ms. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Wolkowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rowe?
Yes.
Ms. Byrne?
Yes.
Any new business?
Madam President, I move we adjourn.
Oh. Wait, Carmella, stay there.
Did I beat him? Did I beat him? That's very important. 'Cause
Yes, it did.
Hold on, I gotta get your picture.
I have to send a text.
Smile.
But good.
There you go. Now it's official, you're mayor.